So today's video is pretty self-explanatory. What I'm going to be doing is going through the NBA right now and determining the best player at every height, so starting at 5'10", going up inch by inch all the way up to 7'5", and determining the best player from every height currently in the NBA. I know a lot of other NBA YouTubers have made videos like this, including this one where we determine the best player from each height, and it seems like a fun video idea, so I'm going to try it out today and see how it goes. And I also made a similar video like this where I determined the best player from every age, and that video is also pretty recent, and if you guys want to check that out, I'll link it down below in the description as well. As for this video, let's get started. So as I mentioned, starting off with 5'10", the best player here is Facu Campazzo. If you guys ask me personally, I think Campazzo is one of, if not the most overrated player in the NBA right now. I don't really understand what people see in his game. Personally, I really don't like his game, and I don't think he brings a lot of value to the Denver Nuggets at all, but there's only two players at 5'10", there's him and Tremont Waters. Tremont Waters doesn't get any playing time yet, so we gotta give it to Campazzo. For 5'11", the best player here is DJ Augustin, who just recently got traded to the Houston Rockets from the Milwaukee Bucks, and personally, I think DJ Augustin is pretty underrated, and I think he's a pretty good role player. He does a great job of controlling the offense with second units, and is a pretty good shooter, can score at all three levels on the court, and is a pretty good playmaker as well. The only other player in contention here is Jordan McLaughlin. He's also been having a pretty good season for the Timberwolves as a role player. He's a good passer, but we got to give this one to Augustine for his overall impact. Moving on to 6-footers, and this one gets a little bit more interesting. We got two players in contention here, Chris Paul and Kyle Lowry, two guys that right now are still making a very good impact in the NBA despite their older age, and I got to give this one to Chris Paul, a very slight edge, and just because he's still a very good defender, he can score, he's very good at shooting the mid-range shots as he's always been, and his scoring has dipped down a little bit this season, but that's going to come with age, and he's still probably one of, if not the best playmakers in the NBA, and Kyle Lowry is still doing his thing as well. Both of these guys are continuing to age a little bit and dropping off, but that's what's going to come at this age, and it's actually a pretty close comparison between the two of them, but I got to give the slight edge to Chris Paul because of how he's led his team to wins this season and has continued what he's been doing with his playmaking. For 6'1", this one's pretty interesting as well. We have two players in contention, Trae Young and Donovan Mitchell, and when we look at offensive stats, Trae Young definitely seems like the winner to this comparison here, but in my opinion, Donovan Mitchell is definitely the better overall player, and for a few reasons. He scores a little bit more efficiently, and I'm just a bigger fan of how he scores the basketball in his overall offensive game. His impact is a little bit better, and he's led his team this season to the #1 seed in the Western Conference, and most of that is because of Rudy Gobert's impact on the defensive end and how they're very well rounded as a team. But Donovan Mitchell is the best offensive player on this team, and we have to give him credit for that and how he's led this team on the offensive end of the floor, and they have one of the best offensive systems in the NBA. In my opinion, Donovan Mitchell is also a very underrated defender, and I think he does a lot of great things on the defensive end of the floor, and Trae Young, to put it nicely, doesn't do that. For 6'2", the two players in contention for this one are Damian Lillard and Kyrie Irving, and this is a comparison that's been getting a lot of talk around the NBA right now, and it's a very interesting comparison, and I'm going to give a slight edge here to Damian Lillard. Obviously, both of them are incredible scorers. They can both handle the ball and create their own shots at an extremely high level. They're very good playmakers and passers, and both of them are probably a little bit under average on defense. I think Damian Lillard is maybe a little bit of a better defender, and really overall, they're a very close comparison here. And the reason I give a slight edge to Dame is just because of what he's done with his team this season and how he's taken a team that I didn't even think was going to make the playoffs because they don't have a lot of depth, and they don't really have a good supporting cast for Dame, and their defense also I thought was going to be really bad this season, but Damian Lillard's scoring ability alone has basically got them into a very good position in the Western Conference, and the way he can score is just incredible in my eyes, and I think he's a top 5 scorer in the NBA right now. His range is obviously incredible, and he can easily score in any part of the court, and he's also very clutch, which you have to factor into this decision as well. Kyrie Irving has been doing incredible things this season as well, but he also has a much better supporting cast, has stars around him to help him out, and his scoring ability isn't as complete as Damian Lillard is. from what I've seen. For 6'3", this one's an easy decision. It goes to Steph Curry, and if you ask me, he's still a top 3 player in the NBA. We know he's easily the best shooter now and of all time. He's averaging 30 points this season, and despite not having Klay Thompson alongside him, has still led the Warriors to being in a playoff position right now, which is absolutely incredible when you look at their circumstances. Their offense completely runs through him, and he still continued to be one of the best playmakers in the league as well, especially with his off-ball movement and really just his overall passing and off-ball playmaking. And the only honorable mention here is Bradley Beal, who's also having an incredible season, but doesn't compare to Steph's abilities on offense. Moving on to 6'4", and for this one, I was definitely surprised because there's not a lot of stars here at this height in the NBA right now, but it's got to go to D'Angelo Russell. Second place here is Victor Oladipo, but we got to give this one to D'Lo just because of his shot creation, and he's maybe having a little bit of a disappointing season this year with the Timberwolves, but we know what he can do offensively. He's great at scoring around the rim, he's very crafty, and a very good passer as well. For 6'5", the best player here is definitely James Harden, and Harden is still probably considered a top 10 player around the league, despite having a complete system change, but it's really been interesting to see how he's fitting in with the Brooklyn Nets right now, because they've been winning a lot recently, and I think it's mostly because of his play, and now he's buying into their system. Harden went from being easily the best scorer in the league in terms of points per game, to taking a bit of hit to that, but his efficiency has gone up, and basically every single aspect of his game has gotten better, except for maybe his defense, but he's leading the league this season in assists, which has absolutely blown my mind, and I've just been really impressed with how he's fitting into the system. He's not the same Harden that we're used to, shooting a lot of step backs and scoring 35 points per game, but he's still a top 10 player in the league, and we gotta give him credit for that. The second best player for 6'5" here is Zach LaVine, who's obviously doing incredible things this season, but his overall game is not as good as Harden's yet. For 6'6", I'm giving this one to Jaylen Brown, and my respect for Jaylen Brown has definitely gone up this season. Watching him play is incredible because his scoring has completely gone up this season. He's still consistently averaging around 25 points per game. He's being very efficient too and can score at all 3 levels on the court, around the rim, in the mid-range, and he's shooting very well from 3 this season as well. I'm also very impressed with his defense, and I legitimately think that Jaylen Brown is a defensive caliber player with how he can keep guys in front of him on the perimeter and how he can basically guard anyone one-on-one, 1 through 4. He's a very good overall player who, in my opinion, is definitely top 20 in the league, and the honorable mention for this one goes to Klay Thompson. If Klay comes back and plays exactly the way that we're used to seeing him play, he probably gets this one, but for now, because of what I've seen this season, I'm giving this one to Jaylen Brown. For 6'7", this one goes to Kawhi Leonard. I still think that Kawhi is the top 5 player in the league pretty easily, and I honestly think that he has a chance to be a sleeper candidate for the MVP this year. He's having an incredibly efficient season when it comes to scoring, almost shooting 50, 40, 90 as a small forward, more than 40% from 3, being a very efficient overall scorer, and still scoring around 27 points per game and leading the Clippers to being one of the best teams in the Western Conference, just like he did last season. He's still a very good defender as well. I would definitely put him in the top 5 of defenders right now in the NBA still, and the only one in contention here to contest Kawhi is Luka Doncic, but really because of efficiency and defense, I still have to give Kawhi a slight edge here. For 6'8", I'm giving this one to Jayson Tatum. It's between him and Paul George, and the reason I'm giving a slight edge to Tatum is mostly because of the clutch factor here and how Tatum is a lot more clutch than Paul George, but I've also been very impressed with Jayson Tatum this season and how he's taken his game to another level. He's a very good 3-level scorer, is great in the pick and roll and can score around the rim a lot, is good at doing things like shooting floaters and in the mid-range, and is great at shooting pull-up threes, and overall is a very good 3-point shooter. His offensive game is great. He's also a very good rebounder and a pretty good defender. I think Paul George and him are probably equal on the defensive end of the floor, but because of how Tatum's scoring is a little bit more clutch, a little bit more smooth, and I think it's a little bit more efficient, and overall just a little bit better, I'm giving this 6'8" to Jayson Tatum. For 6'9", we have LeBron James. Obviously a really easy decision here. LeBron is 36 years old now and still probably the best player in the NBA. And I think if Joel Embiid can't win MVP because he misses too much time with his injury, LeBron's probably going to win it, and he's still doing incredible things rankings this late in his career, and the second place one for 6'9" here is Bam Adebayo. For 6'10", we actually have a really interesting comparison. It's between Kevin Durant and Anthony Davis, KD versus AD, and this is a lot closer comparison than you might think. And I think at the start of the season, I actually would have taken Anthony Davis here, believe it or not, and it's because of how I really still think that he's the best defender in the NBA. And personally, I think Kevin Durant's a little bit overrated because I don't really think he does a lot other than scoring, and obviously he's one of the greatest scorers of all time, but other than that, in my opinion, he doesn't do anything else at an elite level. But because of how Anthony Davis has been a little bit disappointing so far this season with his scoring ability, I've got to give it to Kevin Durant just because he's still averaging 30 points and is probably considered a top 5 player in the league by a lot of people. But let me get this straight, if Anthony Davis comes back and plays exactly like he did last year, I think I'm taking AD over KD. For now though, we're giving this one to KD, and by the way, yes, 6'10" is his official height. I know there have been a lot of confusion on what his height actually is, but for this season, it's officially listed at 6'10". 6'11" is between Nikola Jokic and Giannis Antetokounmpo, and this is actually a really interesting comparison. Two players that are completely different. Jokic is probably a little bit better as an overall offensive player, and Giannis, as we know, is a back-to-back MVP, and it's mostly because of his transition game and how dominant he is scoring there, and how he grabs tons of rebounds, and also how he's one of the best defenders in the league. He won Defensive Player of the Year last season, and for good reason. And for that reason, I have to give this one to Giannis, because Nikola Jokic is not a great defender, but Giannis obviously is, and because of how large the gap is there, I give a slight edge to Giannis right now. But if Nikola Jokic keeps up what he's doing on the offensive end of the floor, especially with his playmaking, which in my opinion is the very best in the NBA, and if he does this in the playoffs too, this could be a different story. For 7-footers, this one goes to Joel Embiid, and we know how incredible Joel Embiid is playing this season. Before his injury, he was probably the frontrunner for MVP, and for many different reasons. He's playing incredible on both ends. Now, I was actually surprised to see that there's not a lot of actual 7'0" players in the NBA. Second place here was Lauri Markkanen. I mean, it really shows you that most of the centers out there that we consider 7-footers are really 6'11". For 7'1", this one goes to Rudy Gobert. He's one of the most impactful players in the league right now, and is probably the frontrunner for Defensive Player of the Year, and that's where all his impact is. Second place for this one is Jakob Poeltl, so it's obviously not a debate. This one goes to Rudy Gobert. For 7'2", oh man, this one of course goes to my guy, Bol Bol. If you guys watch my channel, you know that I'm a huge fan of Bol Bol, and he has to be playing right now to not have his potential wasted. And if you guys want to check out some of the videos I've made about him, definitely be sure to check them out on my channel. But Bol Bol right now has to get out of Denver and has to get to a place where he can show his full potential, and in terms of 7'2" players, he's definitely the best. Second place for this one is Luke Cornett. For 7'3", the only player here is Kristaps Porzingis. 7'4", the only player here is the GOAT Boban Marjanovic, and 7'5" is your boy Taco Fall. So there you have it. That is the end of today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed. Be sure to comment down below if you would make any changes, what you agree with, what you disagree with, and if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any new videos. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you guys next video.